Hey guys, Caroline here. This is the third video in my series on value betting, and in this one I'm going to talk about how the bookies nearly always win. So what I'm trying to explain in this series is what value is. It's about value betting. So what I'm going to try and do here is, in order to explain what value is, I'm going to first show what value is not. And so I want to look at the model, the business model that bookmakers use to understand how they make their money, because it's understanding what they do to see where we can exploit that, where we can exploit some weaknesses in their business model in order to turn that profit back over to us. So as value bettors, we are in a way kind of at war with the bookies, because their business model is to make profit, and the only way they make profit is for punters to lose. And this is the reason why I don't like bookies. So in order to profit, we have to take that profit from the bookie. So I'm going to look in this at the business model of the bookie. And for this, I need to explain a concept called the overround. I'm going to show this in a live example. And what that does is basically the overround is what gives them an edge on almost every single thing they offer in their sportsbook. But notice there that I've put almost, and it's the almost where we can find value. Most of the time, every price that the bookie offers is going to give them an edge. The profit is going to be in their favor. Every now and then we'll find cases where that isn't the case, where the profit is with us, and that's a value bet. So let me now show you an example. So for this, I'm going to jump over to my laptop and show you a few things on the screen. I'll come back to that slide in a moment. Alright, so I have in front of me here something called an overround calculator. I'm going to bring this up in big. Now, for every particular event, there'll be a certain number of selections available. So in the case of a football match, if you're looking at the match odds market, you're going to have the home win, the draw, and the away win. So you've got 3 selections there. If it's a horse race, it would be 1 selection per horse running in the race. So that might be 8 runners, it could be 12 runners, it might only be 3 runners. But in order to explain this concept, I'm just going to look at cases where there are simply 2 options. Okay, it's either a yes, no, it's an over, under, and that kind of thing. So I'm going to look at a football market. I'm going to show you a few examples here. So I'm on William Hill, and I'm looking at one of their coupons here for both teams to score. So this is a list of all the football matches which are coming up over the next few days. And so it's a simple yes, no. So I call this a binary bet. It's either this way or it's this way. There's no in between. So either both teams score or they don't. So what I want to look at here is cases where the odds are the same for both selections. So I saw a few earlier. Here we go. So this is the Portuguese Primeira Liga, which is coming up at the weekend. So there's a game here. And if we have a look, both selections here, again, let me just zoom this in so you can see it. Both selections here are 1.85. Now, if you know anything about decimal odds, evens in decimal is 2.0. So if, for example, you had the toss of a coin, it's either heads or it's tails, that is evens. It's absolutely a 50% chance either way, unless of course you're dealing with a weighted coin or something. And so the odds for both of those selections should be 2.0. But as we can see here, William Hill are placing these both at 1.85. And there's a couple more examples here. Santa Clara and Braga, the same thing, 1.8512, and the game after that. So in these 3 matches, William Hill are saying, we really don't know whether both teams are going to score or not. It could go either way. But they are offering odds of 1.85 instead of odds of 2. Now let me jump back to this calculator and show you what that means. So first of all, if I put in the example of a coin toss, so heads or tails, so I'm going to put in 2.0 for both here. So what we see is that the probability in each case is 50%. Now in what is called a fair book, bookmakers are called bookmakers because they make a book on every event. That's where the term comes from. So we see here that the book is exactly 100%. So this is fair, and there is no overround here. So the overround is a percentage which is applied, which puts the profit in the favor of the bookie. So let me put in those other odds of 1.85 in both cases. So here now we see that the book is actually 108%. So we're showing here a probability of 54%, which is wrong. And so the overround here is 8%. Now what that means in practical terms is that let's say there are 1,000 football matches with these odds, and you were to put, say, £10 on each one. Over time, if you were to pick them completely randomly, over time you would expect to lose around 8% of your money. And this is how the bookies make their money. Now, let me show you a few other examples. So I'm going to look at a football match here. So this is today, I believe. This is the Bundesliga, Freiburg and Leverkusen, and it's starting at 7:30 this evening. Now, again, I'm picking a market here where there are only two options. Now, if this screen looks a bit confusing, it's because they've got several different selections on one screen. This is the goals market, so it's over or under 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 and so on. And I'm going to look here at the 2.5 goals market. This is the most popular market in terms of goals. So if you're not familiar with that, if you think of a football match, you cannot score half a goal. So what that means is over under 2.5. If it's under 2.5, that means it's scored up to 2 goals. If it's over 2.5, that means 3 or more goals are scored. So that's how we can have that particular option there where it's either over or under. So let me plug in these two numbers. So for over it's 1.5 and for under it's 2.4. Come over here and put in 1.5, 2.4. So that's from Paddy Power. And again we see very similar numbers here. It's about 8% overround. But let me show you now an example of where the book is more balanced, where it's fairer. So I'm on Betfair here, and Betfair is an exchange. Now, exchanges completely changed the face of betting when they were first introduced. Betfair came around many, many years ago now, and they allow ordinary punters to come in and set their prices. Now, these prices are not set by the bookie, they are set by the crowds. So if we have a look at this same match here, now again I've got the over under 2.5 selection here, but if we look at these numbers, they're different. They are higher than the odds offered from the bookie. So for a start, if you are just a regular punter and you're betting on sports for fun, I would say in probably 99% of cases you're going to get better odds betting on an exchange than you will with a bookie. So let's compare those. So for the over, we've got 1.6 instead of 1.5. And then if we have a look at the under, Paddy Power are offering 2.4, but on Betfair you can get 2.62, which is quite a bit higher. Now if we have a look at the book, it's 100.67%. The overround is less than 1%. The book on the exchange is much fairer. And this is what you'll find across almost the whole of bookmakers. So let me go back now to my slides. Let me explain a couple more concepts. Right. So I need to explain a concept called backing and laying. As a regular punter, you go to a bookmaker and you back a selection. And backing a selection means that this outcome you have chosen, you believe it's going to win. So let's say I'm going to keep using football matches as an example, and you think that, say, that Freiburg are going to win. You put your £10 on Freiburg. You are backing that selection. But what is the bookmaker doing in that case? The bookmaker is saying, well, they don't think. If you're betting to say that Freiburg are going to win, what the bookmaker is doing is saying, well, Freiburg is not going to win. Doesn't necessarily mean that Freiburg will lose, because it could be the draw. So it's not necessarily, it could be any of the other outcomes. It's probably actually easier to explain with a horse race. If you imagine a horse race where you've got 6 runners, you pick one horse and you say, this horse is going to win. The bookmaker is saying, no, it isn't. Any other horse is going to win. Or maybe that horse will get pulled and it will be voided, in which case they usually give you your money back. But what the bookmaker is doing here is they are laying a bet. Now, if you lay a selection, you are saying this bet will lose. You don't care who else wins. So if it's a horse race, you don't care which other horse wins. All you care about is that the selection which you have laid loses. So this is important to know, because when you go to a bookmaker, you are backing a selection and they are effectively laying it. And the way that works is that as a backer, you are looking for the highest possible price. As a layer, so the bookmaker, they are looking for the lowest possible price. So this is why the bookmakers lower the prices which are available, and you are looking for a higher price. So let me look now at how the bookmakers actually go about setting these prices. So as we've seen for the example, in a fair book, all the selections which were available for a particular event would add up to 100%. And obviously you don't get that at any bookie. So the bookies employ people called odds compilers, and what they do is they are trying to calculate the true odds of any particular selection. So they are going to use a whole host of data, of statistics, of form, get as much data as they possibly can to come up with what they believe is a fair probability. If I go back for a moment to this, we've shown here the odds are directly related to the probability. So what the odds compilers do is they say, okay, what is the probability? So if we look at a horse race, let's say there's 6 runners in a race, they will get all the data about the horses which are running, when they run last, the trainer, the jockey, the ground, there's so much data there. And they put all of that in. They try to come up with the exact probability of every single horse. And then from that probability, they calculate the price. Let me just come back over to my slide here. Oh, next one. Oh, sorry. So they are trying to calculate the true odds. Now, years ago, back in the sort of the 80s and 90s, they didn't have so much in the way of computers available. People would do this manually. Now, these days, of course, the bookies have got a huge amount of data available to try and calculate these true odds. So then what they do, of course, is they've got their true odds. They've got a price which they come from that, and then they splash it a bit. They're going to take a percentage off, deduct, to give them their overround. Now, if you think about how many events and markets there are to price. I mean, right now as I film this is the end of May 2020, and in actual fact there aren't anywhere near as many events as usual because the coronavirus pandemic has caused many sports to be suspended. But this is starting to lift now. Things are easing. But in an ordinary climate, there are thousands and thousands of events, particularly on a weekend. You've got every single sport. You've got around the whole world. You've got all of those leagues and all of those players. And then within each event, there are so many markets. I mean, a typical football match, there could be 30, 40 more different markets that you could bet on. And those bookies have got to compile a price for every single one. Now, value is found where the bookies get their prices wrong. This is key. So what you'll find is the bookies can only do so much. Generally speaking, the more high profile an event is, so for example football, think English Premier League, they are going to have the top-notch data. They are going to have absolute experts who know those leagues inside and out. The chances of a bookie making a mistake in the price of a Premier League is probably pretty slim. However, let's say you happen to be an expert on I don't know, some low division league in Sweden or something, and you're a real expert on that league and you knew everything about them. You might actually be able to compile your own odds, which is more accurate than the bookmaker, and therefore you might be able to identify a case where the price which you think it should be is actually lower than what the bookie's offering, which means that the price available at the bookie offers value. So I'm not going to teach you how to do that. I'm going to show you other ways in which to find value. But generally speaking, that is how it's done. The bookies are using their odds compilers to come up with a price for everything that's available. Every now and then they get the price wrong, and that's where the value is to be found. Okay, so this is quite a long one. I hope you found that useful. I have actually forgotten what is next in the series. Actually, let me just have a look at my list and I'll see what is next in the series. Yeah, so the next video in this series, I'm going to talk about how, particularly in the case of football, you get loyal supporters actually ended up making the bookies rich, and how those loyal fans end up losing their money over the long term. So I hope you found this useful and you're enjoying the series. Please do give me feedback. At the moment, these first few videos are going to be very theoretical. Most of it is going to be theoretical in this particular series, actually. But we will get into slightly more practical stuff a little bit later on. Okay, thank you very much for watching.